So today we're doing something a little different. We're opening up a case file that's thousands of years old. We're taking a journey right into the mind of King Saul, the very first king of Israel who, let's be honest, one of history's most tragic figures. We're going to use a deep psychoanalytic dive to see what happens when you point the tools of modern psychology at this ancient, powerful story of paranoia, power, and complete collapse. Okay, let's get right into it. I mean, this quote really says it all, doesn't it? It just perfectly nails the heart of Saul's story. This isn't just about some king who failed. It's about a man who was fundamentally, psychologically crushed by a job he was never, ever equipped to handle. And that one idea, well, that sets the stage for everything that's about to happen. And this is the real question we're digging into here. Think about it. Saul wasn't just asked to be a general or a leader. He was asked to be the living, breathing embodiment of God's will on earth, to become a symbol for an entire people. What on earth does that kind of pressure do to a human mind? Well, we're about to find out. Okay, let's officially open the file. We're diving into Section 1, a king's psychological profile. We're going to frame this exactly as a modern psychoanalyst might, presenting the case file of Saul, son of Kish. This is our patient. Let's see what's going on inside his head. And right off the bat, the diagnosis is, well, it's heavy. We're talking complex PTSD, late-onset paranoid schizophrenia, and a deep melancholic depression. But, the labels themselves aren't even the most important part. The real issue, the thing at the very heart of all of this, is that core conflict, the massive, unbridgeable gap between Saul the man and Saul the king. That's the wound, and everything else is just bleeding out from there. All right, let's bring in our first expert witness, so to speak, Sigmund Freud. How would the father of psychoanalysis himself look at all of Saul's inner chaos? Well, for Freud, it's all about desires that have been pushed way, way down deep, and a pretty terrifying relationship with authority. Okay, so to really get Freud's angle, we have to understand this key psychological trick our brains play on us. It's called reaction formation. Basically, imagine you secretly, desperately want something, let's say power. But a part of you feels that's a terrible thing to want. So your brain, to protect you, makes you act in the completely opposite way. You don't just hide your ambition, you perform an over-the-top, exaggerated version of humility. And boom, here's the perfect example. Remember that scene where Saul is chosen to be king? Where do they find him? He's hiding with the luggage. A Freudian reading says that's not real modesty. Nope. That is a symptom. That's his reaction formation kicking into overdrive against this huge, terrifying ambition he's got buried inside. And that desire, it doesn't go away. It just festers, and it comes roaring back later as pure paranoia aimed squarely at David. Okay, so that's Freud. Now let's switch gears and look at this whole thing through the eyes of Carl Jung. For Jung, our minds are like a battlefield where these big, universal archetypes are constantly at war. And for Saul, the main event is this epic, tragic split between the public mask he wore and all the parts of himself he just refused to look at. So the huge Jungian idea here is the shadow. The shadow is basically everything about ourselves that we've shoved down into the basement of our minds. And it's not all bad stuff either. It can be creativity, spontaneity, all sorts of things. It's the unlived part of you. And according to Jung, if you don't go down there and confront your shadow, you are heading for disaster. And this is where the analysis gets absolutely fascinating. In this view, David isn't just a political rival. David is Saul's shadow, walking and talking right in front of him. He is everything the rigid, buttoned-up Saul is not. He's the artist, the musician, the one with that effortless charm and connection to the divine. He's everything Saul repressed in himself. And instead of integrating that part of himself, Saul tries to kill it, literally. He tries to destroy his own unlived life. All that internal conflict leads us to another powerful Jungian concept, and it's a bit of a mouthful, an anadiadromia. Put simply, it's the principle of reversal. It's like a rubber band. If you stretch something to its absolute extreme in one direction, it's eventually going to snap back and become its total opposite. And just look at this comparison. This is a perfect psychological portrait of an antiadromia. The man who started his career literally hiding from the crown becomes a paranoid tyrant building monuments to his own greatness. His extreme, repressed humility just snapped, and it swung all the way to its polar opposite, an extreme, narcissistic pride. Okay, for our third and final analyst, we're bringing in Jacques Lacan. Now, his ideas can be a little dense, but trust me, they give us this razor-sharp insight into the precise moment Saul's sanity just shatters. So Lacan had this famous idea called the mirror stage. The gist is that we form our sense of self by seeing ourselves reflected back, either in a real mirror or in the eyes of others. For Saul, David became that mirror. But when Saul looked at David, he saw a perfect reflection of the king he was supposed to be, his ideal I. And seeing that flawless image only revealed to him with horrifying clarity that he was a fraud, an imposter. And this is the line that shatters the mirror. When the women of Israel sing this song, it's no longer just a fear inside Saul's head. It's now the public reflection. It's undeniable. David is the 10,000s king, and Saul is only the thousands king. In that one instant, his entire symbolic identity as the great warrior king just collapses. So what happens next, from a Lacanian view, is a full psychotic break. First, the symbolic order. The world of rules, language, and authority falls apart. The prophet rejects him, God goes silent, the whole structure of his reality is gone. And with that structure gone, he falls into what Lacan calls the real, a terrifying, unstructured chaos. The argument is that this is the evil spirit that torments him, not an outside demon, but the internal horror of reality itself dissolving. So, we've looked at Saul through the lenses of Freud, Jung, and Lacan. Now let's try to bring it all together with this really powerful metaphor, one that blends psychology with a kind of ancient mysticism. In Kabbalah, there's this concept of the broken vessel. The idea is that Saul's tragedy wasn't just a personal failing. Maybe it was a necessary, even cosmic event. He was this container of immense potential who had to be shattered so that a new, more stable order, the Davidic monarchy, could emerge from the pieces. And this table really boils it all down, doesn't it? The core difference between the two men was rigidity versus plasticity. Saul was psychologically rigid. When faced with his own mistakes, he couldn't bend. He could only crack and then blame everyone around him. David, on the other hand, had this psychological plasticity. When he sinned, and he sinned big, he broke completely. But that breaking allowed him to repent, to reform, to actually become something new. And so we land on this final, staggering takeaway. Saul's tragedy was bigger than just one man's madness. It was structural. He was a transitional figure, a sacrificial bridge caught in the violent gears of building a nation. In a way, he had to fail so that the idea of the monarchy itself could succeed. Which leaves us with this final, haunting question. What if history, in its great impersonal movements, sometimes demands that an individual has to be broken? Was the complete psychological destruction of this one man the necessary, tragic price for establishing a kingdom? It's a profound and deeply uncomfortable thought to end on.